Superiority illusion is our tendency to perceive ourselves as being superior to average human beings. This illusion is also known as better than average bias or self-enhancement motive. We are not as special as we think. In fact, thinking we are special is just one more way in which we're normal. At its core, superiority illusion serves as a psychological buffer, boosting our self-esteem and mental resilience for life's challenges. It convinces us we're extraordinary, not just one of the crowd. Superiority illusion also helps us rationalize our failures, disown responsibility for poor decisions, and see the world through an optimistic lens. This could be particularly beneficial in demanding situations, such as a competitive work environment, where believing in one's capacities can actually improve performance. However, it can also lead to overconfidence, poor decision-making, and conflict within teams. From a neuroscience perspective, the medial prefrontal cortex is associated with self-referential thought. When we evaluate ourselves, this part of the brain is very active, filtering information in a way that may contribute to superiority illusion. It's a form of cognitive dissonance reduction. Our brain seeks consistency between our behaviors and beliefs, even if it requires ignoring or downplaying contradictory information. Understanding the selective ways in which our brain processes information can offer valuable insights of our decision-making processes, especially for leaders. This is particularly true when it comes to understanding the Dunning-Kruger effect. This effect suggests that people with low ability at a task are likely to overestimate their ability, while those with high ability are likely to underestimate their competence. The human brain has evolved a complex reward and rationalization system that serves to enforce our pre-existing beliefs and conceptions. For example, the neurotransmitter dopamine is released when our views are validated, providing a pleasurable sensation that makes us more likely to stick with those views. This can create a self-perpetuating loop where the brain seeks information that confirms its existing beliefs and dismisses information that contradicts them. This is the mental process underlying confirmation bias, a mental shortcut I introduced in my previous video. Superiority illusion and the Dunning-Kruger effect are responsible for a lack of self-awareness among less competent people, which is exacerbated by the brain's reward and rationalization system. They not only make poor decisions, but also fail to recognize their mistakes, attributing failures to external factors rather than their own shortcomings. This lack of self-awareness makes it difficult for them to learn from their mistakes and improve, which can be detrimental to both their personal growth and organizational success. In a survey, a staggering 93% of respondents were convinced that they rank the top 50th percentile when it comes to their driving skills. Mathematically, it's impossible for more than half of a population to be above average, yet most people believe they are. Superiority illusion distorts our perception of reality, making us less likely to take necessary precautions. Similarly, a survey reported that 1/4 of high school seniors perceive themselves as being in the top 1% in their ability to get along with others. This would mean that, hypothetically, if you assembled 100 high school seniors in a room, 25 of them would consider themselves unparalleled experts in social interactions, an obviously contradictory proposition. The Stanford Prison experiment is one of the most infamous studies in the field of psychology, shedding light on the darker side of human behavior and the potential impact of situational factors. Conducted in 1971 by psychologist Philip Zimbardo at Stanford University, the study aimed to investigate the psychological effects of perceived power and authority in a simulated prison environment. In the experiment, volunteers were randomly assigned to play the roles of either guards or prisoners in a mock prison set up in the basement of the Stanford's psychology building. Now imagine that you are one of the participants in the standard prison experiment. If you were a prison guard, would you step in to stop the psychological and the physical abuse against the prisoners? Most people believe they would never engage in the reprehensible behaviors exhibited by the guards in the experiment. We often assume we would be the exception, perhaps even the hero, when in reality, the odds suggest otherwise. The Stanford prison experiment shows that under certain conditions, social and psychological pressure can lead average people to commit extraordinary acts, both good and bad. If you were to participate in such an experiment, the beliefs that you would undoubtedly be the good guy may come from the same superiority illusion that blinds us to our own flaws and potential for error. In academia, the belief in one's own exceptionalism is strikingly evident. More than 90% of college professors feel they perform above average in their roles. To put that into perspective, imagine a department meeting where almost everyone in the room believes they are outperforming more than half of their colleagues. How to evaluate leaders' job performance? Leaders influenced by superiority illusion are likely to rate their own competences and relational skills much higher than their subordinates would. For example, in an educational institution, an overwhelming majority of school principals, about 99%, believe they set high standards for teaching. However, according to teachers' perspective, only 84% agree with the principal's perception. The perception gap widens even more when it comes to communicating a clear vision for the school. 98 of school principals think they are effective communicators, but this is a view shared by only 79% of teachers. The disparity between these numbers reveals more than just different opinions. It suggests a critical blind spot in self-assessment among those in leadership positions. So, who should you ask for an accurate evaluation of a leader's performance? The answer likely lies with multi-source feedback approach, often referred to as 360-degree review. This method solicits feedback from a leader's subordinates, peers, and superiors, as well as from the leaders themselves. By collecting data from multiple perspectives, the evaluation becomes more balanced and potentially more accurate. Feedback from subordinates and peers should often carry more weight than evaluations from superiors or self-assessments. Subordinates and peers interact with leaders on a daily basis and have first-hand experience of their management style, problem-solving abilities, and interpersonal skills. Their insights offer a more rounded view of a leader's strengths and weaknesses. Superiors may not be fully attuned to the day-to-day interactions and may focus on metrics and outcomes, potentially missing the nuances of leadership qualities like empathy, open communication, and team motivation. This approach could be particularly useful for measuring intangibles like interpersonal warmth, sensitivity, and open communication, traits that leaders often overestimate in themselves. Therefore, a balanced feedback system that prioritizes input from those who work closely with the leader can be instrumental in providing a more accurate and actionable evaluation. We not only think we are above the average, but also pay more attention to ourselves than others pay to us. This is called the spotlight effect. We are convinced that others are paying more attention to us than they actually are, magnifying our self-consciousness and affecting our behavior. In an experiment, participants were asked to wear an embarrassing t-shirt and walk into a party. After the event, one questioned about how many people they thought had noticed their t-shirt. The participant overwhelmingly believed that their embarrassing t-shirt was the center of everyone's attention. In reality, the majority of the partygoers had not noticed it at all. This underscores the extent to which we overestimate the attention directed towards us, inflating our own importance in the eyes of others. Recall bias blind spot I introduced in my previous video. We are adept at spotting biases in others, but we tend to be oblivious to our own biases. This feeds into a circular logic where we assume that we are less susceptible to biases and therefore superior to others in our judgment and decision-making. The spotlight effect and the bias blind spot work in tandem to create a distorted self-view. On one hand, we believe we are the center of attention, and on the other, we think we are more rational and less biased than those around us. This dual illusion can have significant implications, particularly for leaders who must make objective decisions while navigating complex social dynamics. Most of us believe that we are less vulnerable to biases than others, even after being taught about them. Self-awareness of the superiority illusion and the bias blind spot is often not enough. This is where external input becomes valuable. Colleagues, friends, and family can serve as mirrors, reflecting our blind spots back to us. However, benefiting from this feedback requires an openness to listen without becoming defensive, a challenge in itself. For leaders, especially those exhibiting narcissistic or egocentric tendencies, being open to criticism and critical feedback can be particularly difficult. Narcissistic leaders frequently display a strong superiority illusion. When things go well, they credit their own brilliance and the so-called leadership skills for the success. When things go awry, the blame is conveniently shifted onto others, painting a picture in which they can do no wrong. How can we identify leaders who are under the sway of the superiority illusion? One way is to observe their communication with the subordinates. For example, newsletters to employees can be telling. Do those leaders predominantly highlight their own achievements while minimizing or ignoring the hard work of their team? This could be a red flag. Similarly, paying close attention to their interpersonal interactions can also be revealing. When they display subtle signs of contempt or disdain when interacting with those they consider below them, those leaders may outwardly preach the virtues of humility and teamwork, but their body language, eye contact, tone, and behaviors often tell a different story. They may publicly praise the importance of every team member, while privately holding the belief that the commoners are simply not up to their level. While the superiority illusion has its advantages, offering us a mental fortitude to navigate the life's ups and downs, it can also keep us from seeing ourselves and the world clearly. Recognizing the dark side of superiority illusion is the first step toward more accurate self-assessment, improved decision-making, and ultimately better decision. Start observing your decision-making process and those of others around you. See if you can spot instances of superiority illusion. Please feel free to share your comments below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.